Water, the most essential resource. We need clean water to drink, to bathe, and for basic human health and safety. It nourishes our plants, trees, and crops. But as we all know, Santa Barbara's semi-arid climate is susceptible to extended droughts. So what happens when the water dries up? In 1985, Santa Barbara's water portfolio was not as vast as it is today. Santa Barbara water came from 3 locations: Cachuma Reservoir, Gibraltar Reservoir, and groundwater basins. The extent of the 1980s drought took Santa Barbara by surprise.
It wasn't enough. And as the drought proceeded, we started looking for other sources of water.
At that time, a variety of solutions were proposed to the City Council to help alleviate the drought. Water police, higher water rates, and even bringing an iceberg from Alaska down to Santa Barbara.
Well, we knew we had to get another source of water.
In April of 1990, the City Council requested bid proposals for a temporary emergency desalination plant. Ionics won the bid and was contracted to finance, design, construct, operate, and maintain the desalination facility.
How that staff described that effort was that was running a 2-minute mile. It was hurried, it was a desperate effort. If we hadn't done that, we really would have been in trouble.
The Charles Meyer desalination plant took under 2 years to construct, and on March 4th, 1992, it started producing water.
And it tastes good too, really.
After being put into service, local reservoirs were replenished by 2 years of above-average rainfall. The desalination plant was put into short-term reserve mode and eventually long-term standby.
And if the March miracle hadn't happened in March of 1991, where the reservoirs all refilled, we would have been really up a dry creek.
In July of 1994, the City Council approved the city's long-term water supply program, which included the desalination plant as a permanent water supply. Through this process, the facility underwent environmental review for permanent use.
And here we walk in there, 2 years ago or whatever, and there's this time warp of floppy disk Apple II technology that's in this room. It's just, it's kind of wild.
Efforts continued until 1996 to secure the final permits to operate the facility up to 10,000 acre-feet per year. However, due to standby operating costs and deteriorating membranes, the city sold off parts. The sale of the permeable membranes helped to recoup the city's costs associated with permitting the facility and also reduced the long-term costs to water ratepayers for maintaining the facility. Between 1992 and 2011, Santa Barbara received variable but sufficient rainfall to supply our community's demands. However, in February of 2014, the city declared a drought due to a reduction in surface water supplies caused by 3 years of significantly below average rainfall.
In 2014, we had just experienced the 3 driest consecutive years in recorded history. And by 2014, after continued lack of rainfall, the city declared a drought condition and started implementing its water shortage contingency plan.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara declaring a Stage 2 drought condition and establishing water use regulations to be effective during a Stage 2 drought condition.
Droughts are cyclical in nature. With surface water supplies dwindling, the city had to again look for an alternative source of potable water.
I said to people, well, just you wait, there will come a time when you will need that desal plant again.
On July 21, 2015, the City Council unanimously voted to reactivate the desalination plant to help alleviate drought conditions in Santa Barbara.
It was a big decision for the council to pull the trigger on going forward in recommissioning the desalination plant. But I think, as I've said many times, desalinated water is so much better than no water.
Through a competitive bid process, the city hired IDE Americas to reactivate the desalination plant, and in September of 2015, construction started. Existing permits from the original facility streamlined the approval and entitlement process and saved on costs.
Having the old desal plant here has been invaluable. Not only has it secured a property to actually build the facility, but it's also really been fundamental to our permits, and it has secured us our intake pipeline, and it's also been critical to our outfall. Without that investment that was made in the 90s, there is no way today we'd be looking at having this facility here to help us.
The new plant has the latest desalination technology and is staffed 24/7. The plant uses 40% less energy than the original emergency desalination plant. It also uses better intake screens, along with many other technological improvements to reduce environmental impacts.
The first step in the desalination water treatment process starts at the intake pumps, located 2,500 feet offshore just south of Stearns Wharf. Seawater enters the structures through a fine mesh wedge wire screen, similar to the width of a window screen, at a velocity of less than 0.5 feet per second, which is less than the typical ocean currents. This design is considered the best available technology for minimizing marine life entrapment and impingement. After the water passes through the screens, pumps push the water onshore. Once on shore, additives are introduced into the water to help bind small particles together so they're easier to filter out. The water is then filtered through a sand and gravel filter to remove sediment, bacteria, and viruses. This process is similar to the process used for treating local surface water, such as water from Lake Cachuma. Next, the seawater is forced through reverse osmosis membranes at a pressure of 800 pounds per square inch. As the water passes through the membranes, the salt molecules and minerals are removed from the water to produce an ultra-pure water. During this process, approximately half of the water becomes drinking water, and the other half is rejected as brine. Natural minerals are then added to the ultra-pure water to make it compatible with existing water supplies before being distributed to customers. The waste product from the desalination process is referred to as brine and is about twice as salty as normal seawater. It is passed through an energy recovery system, which saves the plant about 40% in energy costs. It is then blended with the city's treated wastewater and is released into the ocean over 1.5 miles offshore. This blended released water is slightly less salty than the ocean and is released through a diffused pipeline to protect sea life.
In May of 2017, major construction was completed and the startup and testing phase began before distributing desalinated water into the water system. The total capital cost of the desalination plant was $71 million. The desal plant currently produces 3,125 acre-feet of water a year, and the design of the plant allows for future expansion up to 10,000 acre-feet a year, depending on the need of the community. Desalinated water is softer than surface and groundwater. Customers with water softeners in the desal water distribution area may have the opportunity to adjust their water softener settings to soften the water less, thus saving water and chemicals needed in their treatment process.
Desal water will meet all state and federal regulations, and we've been working really closely with the State Water Resources Control Board and the Department of Drinking Water to ensure that that happens. And again, reminding the community that there are over 1,800 desal plants in the world.
At its current capacity, the desal plant will provide approximately 30% of Santa Barbara's water needs during the drought.
What the desal does for us is actually diversifies our water supply portfolio, and that in turn allows us to be more resilient to drought. And that's really what the purpose of desal is to try and minimize our exposure to shortages in the future.
Even though the desalination plant rounds off the city's water supply portfolio, droughts are intrinsically cyclical, and conservation efforts are still an important part of our water supply.
You know, I think we're in a new normal. We have to recognize that this drought won't be the last one. We used less water before this recent drought than we did in the 1980s, even with bigger population. So conservation is going to be a constant, important part of our everyday water supply portfolio.
The city's current adopted long-term water policy considers desalinated water as a drought supply. However, the city's existing permits allow for a range of operating scenarios, which could include non-drought operations. When the drought emergency ends and our groundwater supplies have recovered from drought-related pumping, the role of desalinated water in the city's long-term water supply plan will be considered by the City Council.
The desalination plant is permitted for regional use, although it is a facility that's owned by the city. Right now, it would be the city's decision whether we would develop agreements to send the water to anyone else.
Water is the most essential resource in a community. The Charles Meyer Desalination Plant plays an important role in the city's water supply now and into the future.